The lights in the studio were soft, glowing gold against the polished wood of the desk. Laughter echoed from the audience as Stephen Colbert welcomed his guest, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. The mood was cheerful. The two men exchanged a warm handshake and Harry settled into the chair with ease. His smile calm, his body relaxed. The audience clapped longer than usual. There was a buzz in the air, the kind that came when a royal was in the room. And everyone was eager to hear what he had to say. Colbert began with jokes, easing into the conversation like he always did. They laughed about British tea, California slang, and the differences between royal life and American freedom. Harry smiled and responded with charm. He spoke about his children, their love for surfing, his charity work, and how moving to the U.S. had brought him a sense of peace. His latest book, a memoir about truth and healing, had sold millions of copies. He talked about mental health, family, and rebuilding. But then the tone shifted. It was subtle at first. Colbert leaned forward, slightly folded his hands, and looked Harry in the eye. "So, Afghanistan," he said, pausing. "You've spoken before about your time in the military, that you were on the ground, that you saw the reality of war, that changed you." Harry nodded, his voice steady. "It did. It made me rethink everything. My purpose, my family, my country." Colbert gave a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And during that time, did you ever come across something called Operation Helix?" There was a flicker in Harry's expression. Quick blink, a small shift in posture. He recovered quickly. "That's not something I can speak about." Colbert raised his eyebrows. "But you do know what it is." Harry hesitated. "I'm not sure where you're going with this." The audience grew quiet. The laughter from earlier seemed like it had come from another world. Colbert opened a small folder on his desk and pulled out a tablet. "Let's go back a few years," said, tapping the screen. "We have a clip from your 2016 interview with BBC One. You saidn't, quote, 'I was never involved in any covert military operation. I stayed in the lines I was given.'" Harry nodded slowly. "Yes, I said that." Colbert turned the screen to the camera so the audience at home could see. But according to a newly uncovered document, that may not be entirely true. On the screen, a black and white graphic appeared showing a redacted document marked classified MOD UK eyes only. Colbert continued reading. "This document, obtained by independent journalists earlier this week, lists you as a passive liaison in something called Operation Helix, a counterintelligence effort linked to arms trafficking routes through Helmand Province. There's even a code name, Sparrowhawk." A low murmur swept through the audience. Harry looked down at his hands, then back up at Colbert. "I'm aware of the rumors," he said quietly. "But I never acted outside of my role. I was a soldier, not a spy." Colbert didn't blink. "But were you briefed on it?" "I can't confirm or deny any operation like that," Harry replied. "Even if it existed." There was a long pause. The audience was silent. Colbert shifted in his seat. "I understand. But here's the thing, Your Highness. The world has changed. Information doesn't stay hidden anymore. People are asking questions." Harry leaned back slightly. "So, are you suggesting that I'm hiding something?" Colbert tapped the tablet again. Another clip began to play, which a grainy video, clearly from a security camera. A young man who looked strikingly like Harry was sitting at a table with a man in uniform. The video had no sound, but the date stamp showed 2016. The location, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Colbert spoke carefully now. "There are claims that during a diplomatic mission, an official, perhaps you met with Saudi intelligence regarding the potential release of a detained British journalist. That same journalist disappeared days later." Harry's face was pale now, his jaw tight. "That is not true." "You weren't there?" Colbert asked. "I was in the region for military reasons. But I had no involvement in anything related to that journalist." Colbert let the silence stretch. "You were more than just a duchess's husband, weren't you?" The camera zoomed in slowly on Harry's face. He blinked, but said nothing. A quiet alarm rang backstage, Colbert's producer, signaling the end of the segment. Colbert raised a hand. "We'll be right back after the break," he said, smiling as the music played and the lights dimmed. But the tension didn't go away. As the commercial rolled, Harry sat still. He didn't speak. Colbert leaned in, whispered something, then turned away. And just like that, the moment was sealed. The internet exploded within minutes. Social media lit up. Hashtag Operation Helix started trending. Twitter was split down the middle. Some defended Harry, saying he was being ambushed. Others claimed he was finally being exposed. Inside the control room, Colbert's team watched the numbers climb, viewers in the millions. Headlines in dozens of languages, but no one noticed the man in the gray suit who quietly left the backstage hallway with a flash drive in his hand, and a message already being typed into a secure channel. Subject: Sparrowhawk has been activated. Protocol Helix compromised. Phase 2 begins. The studio went dark for the commercial break, but inside Prince Harry's mind, lights were flashing memories, questions, warnings. The room felt colder now. Cheers from earlier had vanished, replaced by a wall of silence backstage. His hands were still folded, but his fingers twitched slightly. Stephen Colbert hadn't said much as the cameras cut. She gave a brief nod and turned to speak with his producer. Harry sat alone, staring at the floor for a moment before finally rising. He made his way to the green room where his security detail waited just outside. His chief aide, Marcus, met him halfway, eyes sharp and unreadable. "You need to see this," Marcus whispered, handing him a phone. It was already buzzing with alerts. News sites had picked up the segment, some calling it a confrontation, others a takedown. Headlines ranged from "Colbert exposes Prince's secret life" to "Did Harry lie about military ops?" More concerning was a second alert, a flagged message from an encrypted network Harry hadn't accessed in years. The sender was marked only as Sentinel-4, and the message was short. They breached the cover. Protocol compromised. Full sequence initiated. Harry's pulse jumped. He looked up at Marcus. "Get me somewhere private now." Meanwhile, in a quiet monitoring center buried inside a black site on the outskirts of Brussels, 5 screens blinked to life. Analysts from a covert NATO-linked unit stared at streaming footage of the Colbert interview, cross-referencing facial micro-expressions with AI-driven behavioral mapping. On the 4th screen, a 2016 file codenamed Helix Prime was accessed. The photo attached to the file was unmistakable. Prince Harry, in desert fatigues, seated in an undisclosed facility flanked by British and Saudi officers. The document's clearance level was beyond top secrets. Contents had never been made public, even to some UK prime ministers. A voice crackled through the room. "We have confirmation. The American media just gave Helix its ignition point. Prepare for potential diplomatic fallout." Back in Manhattan, Stephen Colbert was in his dressing room, scrolling through his own messages. He hadn't expected this segment to go that far. It had been pitched to him by one of the show's producers, Chloe, sharp ex-journalist with ties to investigative circles in London. She'd insisted the files were real, that this was more than gossip, that it was public interest now. Colbert was watching the storm unfold and wondering if he had just poked a sleeping bear. His phone rang. It was Chloe. He answered. "They've pulled your guest lineup for the rest of the week," she said quickly. "The network is getting calls from the State Department. Something about cross-border intel leaks." "You told me this was bulletproof," Colbert replied. "It is," she said. "But you weren't supposed to ask him directly about Operation Helix." "You handed me the file," he snapped. "I didn't think you'd read it verbatim on air." There was a long pause. Then Chloe's voice dropped. "You don't understand. Helix is real and he was involved. Then we've just triggered a global intelligence response." Colbert stood still. "Is this going to get someone killed?" Another pause. "It might already have." In a hotel suite uptown, Meghan Markle had just put the kids to sleep when she saw Harry's face on every screen. She hadn't known about the interview's full scope, only that he'd been told it would be casual. As the clips played back across news networks, she froze at the part where Colbert asked about Riyadh. She picked up her phone and dialed. Harry, no answer. She called again. Still nothing? The third time he picked up, but said nothing, Harry, she whispered. What's happening? His voice was quiet. They know. Megan sat down slowly. Who knows? All of them. MI6 NSA, probably the Saudis, maybe even the Israelis. And now half of Twitter. She tried to process it. Is this about Helix? Yes, he said. And it's not just about what happened back then. It's what's coming next. Just then, Marcus entered the room and handed Harry another phone. A burner device. An emergency signal had just gone active as Safo's beacon. Long decommissioned, now blinking again for the first time in 6 years. Someone from the old network was calling him in. Harry stood. We need to leave New York now. Where? Megan asked. The private jet lifted off just after midnight. It's cutting through the storm clouds hanging over New York. Prince Harry sat near the back, staring out the window, his reflection lost in the glass. Megan sat across from him, scrolling silently through. Breaking news on her tablet. Each headline made her stomach twist tighter. Prince Harry questioned on secret UK military program. Colbert confronts royal with intelligence allegations. What is Operation Helix? The world didn't know the details yet, but the questions had already turned into conspiracy. Within hours, political commentators, intelligence experts, and armchair theorists had flooded every platform, spinning wild narratives that ranged from Harry being a rogue agent to him secretly preventing a global conflict. But what none of them knew was how close they actually were to the truth. Marcus entered from the cockpit. We land in Geneva in 5 hours. We've arranged a secure car and transport. But there's a change. Harry turned to him. What kind of change? Someone made contact. It's from the old unit. Harry didn't respond at first. He just sat back slowly, processing. Megan looked between them. What does that mean? Harry's voice was low. It means whatever was buried in Helix. It didn't stay buried. Geneva Airport was quiet. When they arrived, cold air wrapped around them as they stepped onto the tarmac. A black SUV with tinted windows waited near a private hangar. Inside sat a man Harry hadn't seen in years. James Thorne, former MI6 liaison, now supposedly retired. He didn't stand when Harry entered, just glanced up and offered a tired smile. Still dragging the crown through the mud, are we? Harry gave a dry smile. You called us. Thorne nodded. Because they didn't just leak the Helix files, they altered them. Someone wants you to look guilty. Megan leaned forward. Why now? After all these years. Thorne looked at her. 'Cause Helix is about to resurface. And not just as a memory. Someone's trying to activate parts of it again. Harry narrowed his eyes. Helix was shut down. I made sure of that. Thorne tossed a file onto the seat between them. Not all of it. Some assets were never decommissioned. And some of them went freelance. Middle East, Eastern Europe. You remember Red Falcon? The name hit Harry like a slap. Red Falcon, real name Majid al-Habashi, had been part of a controversial Saudi intelligence network that had worked with Helix operatives during a counter-terror joint mission in 2018. He had gone missing after the program was shut down. Until now, he had been presumed dead. Thorne flipped open the file. Grainy images of Red Falcon in Istanbul, Paris, and most recently, Geneva. He's here. And if he talks, the entire framework of Helix could collapse. Not to mention what that would mean for you Kaisodi relations, Megan asked. So you're saying someone wants to stop him from talking? Or wants him to speak? Both, Thorne said. Depends on which side you're on. The room was silent for a beat. Then Harry stood up. Where is he now? Hotel Contessa. It's 2 floors locked down by private security. Not Saudis, not ours. Someone else. Harry looked to Megan. This is it. If I face him, I can stop this before it gets bigger. You're not going alone, she said firmly. Thorne raised an eyebrow. It's not a negotiation. You're Go in, there's no telling who's watching. Mossad, CIA, GCHQ, they're all listening now. The moment you show your face, someone will pull a trigger. Maybe not a bullet, but a story. An arrest warrant. A drone tag. Harry ran his hand through his hair. Then we stay in the shadows. Go quiet, off-grid. Thorne smirked. Still think like a soldier. Still am one. Harry replied that. Night, under a moonless sky, they approached the hotel's service entrance in a disguised maintenance van. Marcus drove, Thorne monitored comms, Megan coordinated through secure lines. Harry changed into a dark gray jacket, simple and forgettable. His face, too famous to hide, was masked by a cap and a slight beard grown since the public last saw. They entered through the basement. No cameras. No security. Not yet. But above them, on the 12th floor, a meeting was already underway between Red Falcon and a shadowy figure known only as the broker. Someone suspected of selling Helix. Intel to the highest bidder. What Harry didn't know was that another player had just landed in Geneva. Caroline Levitt, the conservative firebrand from the earlier televised debate with Senator Warren, had been invited to a mysterious summit involving private tech donors, intelligence veterans, and political influencers. Her invitation came with one line, "You've exposed media lies. I'll help shape the next war." And as Carolyn stepped into the hotel across the street, she glanced out her window, unknowingly watching the same building where Harry moved through the darkness. Both pawns in a global game that was just beginning to reveal its board. A low hum vibrated through the service elevator as it crept upward, floor by floor. Harry stood near the control panel, staring at the red numbers blinking above the door. 11, then 12. He checked his earpiece again. Thorne's voice came through with a whisper. "We've got heat signatures in room 1206 and 1207. Red Falcons in 1206. 1207 is armed 3 men, maybe 4. They're not hotel security." Harry nodded once. Megan's voice cut in softly, calm but urgent. "Drone surveillance shows a black SUV parked in the alley with tinted windows. It arrived 20 minutes ago. Not local plates, no movement." In the cramped space of the elevator, Harry's thoughts raced. The last time he'd seen Red Falcon was during a mission that wasn't supposed to exist, one that was erased, redacted, buried under a mountain of classified stamps. And now the ghost of that mission was alive again. The elevator dinged. Harry stepped out quietly. The hallway was dim, hushed. A flickering wall light made shadows jitter across the carpet. He walked steadily past one door, then another. When he reached 1206, he stopped. From his pocket, he pulled a key card. Thorne had procured one that might last 5 seconds before the system flagged it. He slid it through. A green light blinked. He was in. The suite was silent. Clean, too. Clean. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and cologne. "And then you look older," came a voice from the shadows. Harry turned. There, sitting on a couch with a whiskey glass in his hand, was Red Falcon. His beard was grayer now, his eyes colder, more deliberate. He didn't stand. He just gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit, Prince." Harry sat, his heart steady. "Why Geneva?" Red Falcon laughed softly. "Why not? Neutral ground. No one controls the rules here. They're watching us, listening." Red Falcon nodded. "I'm counting on it." Harry leaned forward. "Then talk. Tell me what this is about. Why now?" Red Falcon's expression shifted, his face tightening. "'Cause Helix was supposed to die. You shut it down, but someone kept a copy, someone high up. They've reactivated fragments protocols, surveillance nodes, psychological targeting software. They're not using it on terrorists. They're using it on civilians. Politicians, media." Harry blinked. "Who? I don't know who exactly. I know who's financing it. Look into Echo Front." Harry frowned. The cybersecurity think tank. They're not just tech people. They're former operatives, contractors, media, influencers. They manipulate elections, frame narratives, blackmail political enemies. And now they want to discredit you. Me? Anyone who knows Helix existed. Before Harry could respond, a sudden explosion of static came through his earpiece. Then Meghan's voice panicked. Harry, move! They're coming up the west stairwell. 4 armed men. Harry stood instantly. We're blown. Red Falcon was already grabbing a pistol from under the coffee table. You go, I stay, you won't make it out. I'm not trying to, but I'll buy you 30 seconds. Harry hesitated, then nodded once and headed for the back exit of the suite. He slipped out just as the door burst open behind him. With a thud and shouting in Arabic, down the fire stairs he moved fast, descending 3 flights before the emergency alarm triggered. The whole hotel buzzed with confusion. Outside, Marcus screeched up in the van. Harry jumped in and slammed the door. Drive. From across the street, Carolyn Levitt stood at her window, phone in hand, recording the chaos. She didn't know yet what she had captured, but Echofront would. Later that night, in a Geneva safe house, Harry sat in front of a laptop. Thorne was patching into a secure server. We recovered partial audio, Thorne said. Red Falcon got out 3 names. Before the signal went dead, want to hear them? Harry nodded slowly. Thorne hit play. The voice was distorted, crackling through the encryption. But the names were clear. Montrose, Vasilev, Camden. Harry sat back, stunned. Montrose was a UK peer and former defense advisor. Vasilev was a Russian tech magnate with ties to neural AI development. And Camden was Meghan's former security chief. Meghan looked up from her tablet, her face pale. Camden was loyal. Harry didn't say anything at first. Then maybe he was, maybe he isn't anymore. Meanwhile, deep in a secure facility outside London, a woman watched the same footage of the Geneva escape on 6 monitors. The room buzzed with encrypted chatter and algorithmic analysis. Her face was calm, clinical. Her name was Dahlia Greyformer. MI6 strategist turned private intelligence mogul. She turned to an aide. Activate Phase 2. Let the Americans think it's disinformation. Leak Camden's name anonymously. Let Harry run in circles. We need him chasing ghosts. And Red Falcon. She smirked. Collateral. Always was. Outside, the storm rolled in again. And somewhere in the dark, another player stepped in too. The game, unseen, unnamed, but ready. 'Cause Operation Helix was no longer about protecting secrets. The safe house lights were low. A digital map projected onto the wall glowed faintly, highlighting crisscross travel paths, phone pings, and IP traces. Harry stood with arms crossed, studying every movement. Meghan sat across from him, scrolling through encrypted messages from an anonymous source only known as Journal_6. They knew you'd go to Geneva, she said. They planted that footage of you and Red Falcon on social media within minutes. It wasn't a leak, it was an operation. Harry nodded grimly. They wanted us to run, to get louder, to give them justification. Thorne entered, throwing a stack of files on the table. Camden's last movements. Cross-referenced his accounts. 2 days before the Colbert interview, he wired funds to a shell company tied to Echofront. That's not loyalty. It's betrayal. Meghan stared at the folder. No, that's not him. Not unless he was forced. Harry looked at her, torn between belief and logic. He was one of ours, Meg, but he's either dead or playing for someone else now. Just then, a ping came through Meghan's tablet. Breaking MI6 confirms ex-royal link to foreign intelligence leaked the CNN. Headline was bold and unapologetic. Below it, a video snippet showed Colbert cutting Harry off during the interview, then quickly cutting to black. They were shaping a narrative one piece at a time. Thorne spoke again. We've traced Echofront to a data center in Estonia. And guess who's flying there tonight? Harry already knew. Montrose. Thorne confirmed. Private flight. Lands in Tallinn in 6 hours. And he's not alone. Vasiliev is already there. It's a summit. Harry paced. Summit of what? Tech and espionage. Influence, Megan said softly. They're consolidating power. Data, AI, intelligence, media. This isn't about any one country anymore. Harry grabbed his coat. Then we go to Estonia. No official channels. Megan asked none. Harry replied. We're ghosts now. Tallinn was dark when they landed. Cold wind cut across the tarmac like knives. A black vehicle met them at a side gate arranged by one of Thorne's former contacts in Estonian intelligence. Their destination, an abandoned embassy, once British. Now a private conference hall with state-of-the-art security buried beneath old brick and snow. Cameras were everywhere. Inside, echoes of conversation and the clink of glasses drifted from upper rooms. The summit had begun. From across the street, Harry, Megan, and Thorne monitored the building from a darkened surveillance van. Inside, Montrose stood before a circular table, speaking to a dozen shadowed figures without names. Billionaires. Without borders. The media war is in full swing, Montrose said. Discrediting Harry was phase 1. Now we proceed with red light. Someone spoke from the shadows, and the Americans. Montrose smiled. They'll follow the noise. That's what they always do. In the van, Megan's eyes narrowed. Red light? That's Echo Front's digital kill switch. The protocol designed to erase reputations, plant false evidence, fabricate data trails. Thorne added, and Montrose just confirmed it's live. Harry was already moving. We have to get inside. We need a full recording. That's our leverage. Thorne and Harry moved through a rear utility tunnel beneath the embassy using an old maintenance map Harry remembered from his days in diplomatic security. Megan remained in the van, monitoring feeds, guiding them by whisper and static. Inside the embassy basement, the two reached a crawlspace beneath the conference floor. Thorne planted a mic sensor directly beneath the table. Voices poured in. The Helix archives go online in 48 hours, Vasiliev was saying. It will look like a leak. But it will destroy his credibility and anyone tied to him. Then Montrose, and if he fights back? A third voice, older and American accented, replied coldly. He won't. He'll be arrested in London before he gets the chance. Back in the van, Megan's screen flickered, then went black. She gasped. Signals being jammed. Someone knows we're here. A spotlight outside hit the van. Tires squealed. Men in black rushed the doors. Megan hit the emergency beacon. Before the doors burst open, inside the tunnel, Thorne's radio crackled and died. He looked at Harry. We're blown. Harry took a deep breath. Then we go up. Chaos broke out. Fire alarms blared. Sprinklers triggered. Inside the summit room, confusion reigned as the walls were suddenly filled with the echoes of their conversation projected from hidden speakers. Thorne had rigged to the embassy's old audio system. Every word Montrose and Vasiliev had just said echoed through the hall. You fool! Montrose yelled. Shut it down. Harry appeared in the doorway, soaked, calm, unarmed. Too late, you've already gone viral. Camera phones from staff and guests were everywhere. Within minutes, clips would be online. Irrefutable. As guards moved to seize him, Estonian police stormed in, triggered by the embassy's emergency beacon. Thorne emerged from the shadows with hands raised. We're here under duress. Check the feed. The UK is being hijacked from within. Harry turned to Montrose, who now stood frozen, trapped between legacy and exposure. This was never about me, Harry said. It's about the lie you built, Hand, the world you thought would never see it, but it had. And now the reckoning had begun. Snow fell silently over London as chaos unfolded across every major broadcast network. The leaked audio from the Tallinn summit, projected into the room and recorded by countless phones, was now everywhere. News anchors on CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and even RT were calling it the Echo Front tapes. Harry and Meghan had made it. Back on a military transport coordinated by a quiet ally in Estonian intelligence. They were hidden now, deep beneath Westminster in a secure MI5 holding facility, one that had not seen use since Cold War days. But this wasn't protection. It was containment. "I thought we were past this," Meghan said as she paced the dim room. "After everything we exposed Montrose, Red Light, Vasiliers, they should be arresting them, not locking us in." Harry sat against the concrete wall, head low. "They're not protecting us. They're protecting the monarchy, the system, the illusion." An iron door creaked open. A figure entered, Director Abigail Cray, head of Britain's Joint Intelligence Committee. Crisp suit. No smile. "Operation Helix has been officially classified as disinformation," she said. "The government does not acknowledge the existence of Echo Front or Red Light, or your alleged summit." "You heard the recordings," Meghan snapped. Cray didn't blink. "They're already being called AI fabrications. It's the footage from Tallinn, already pulled from most platforms. The Estonian officials who helped you have been recalled." Harry stood now. "So what? You'll bury this again." Cray stepped closer. "This isn't about truth, Mr. Windsor. This is about order. You rip the mask off a machine that governs half the globe. If it crumbles, so does the balance. We've all built flawed, yes, but stable. And what about justice?" Again asked. "What about accountability?" Cray looked at her, finally showing something like humanity. "Sometimes, Ms. Markle, justice means choosing which truths to kill." She turned and left. That night, London streets flooded with protesters. Across Europe, hackers from transparency collectives began releasing satellite data, military correspondences, and internal communications tied to Red Light. The story couldn't be killed. It was mutating. Inside the war rooms of Washington and Brussels, diplomats scrambled to distance themselves from the fallout. Several prominent intelligence directors quietly resigned. 2 UK cabinet members disappeared from public view entirely. Harry and Meghan watched it all from a single wall-mounted monitor. Their faces tired, but their eyes steady. "Protocol red line failed," Meghan whispered, "or it succeeded in exposing itself." Harry said, Then a knock. It was Thorne, somehow freed, somehow smiling. "They let me walk," he said. "No charges. No trial. Just a one-way ticket to nowhere. 'Cause they think this is over." "But it's not," Harry said. Thorne nodded. "No, because someone leaked this someone inside." "Gah! You didn't record that summit alone. There's a mole in Echo Front." "Gah!" Meghan leaned forward. "You're sure?" Thorne handed over a thumb drive. "Encrypted packet. Sent to me anonymously. Contains documents from inside the Home Office budget authorizations. Encrypted messages from Montrose. Even drafts of press releases prepared before the Colbert interview." Harry took the drive. "They planned everything, even the collapse." Meghan turned to the monitor. "So now what?" Thorne smirked. "Now we do the one thing they didn't prepare for. We go live. Not through media, not through politics, through people. Direct broadcast, no edits, no spin." Harry stared at the drive, then nodded. Within hours, a live stream appeared on thousands of devices. An old-school signal bouncing between servers. Across nations, masked through onion routers and quantum firewalls. The title was simple: The Real Interview. It began with footage of Colbert's confrontation, then the Tallinn summit, then the documents. Meghan narrated calm but fierce, exposing the timeline, the manipulation, the fear tactics. Harry followed, naming names, breaking protocol, pulling down every curtain they had once been forced to stand behind on 47 minutes. They dismantled an empire of deceit. World leaders watched, citizens raged. Protests turned into occupations. Intelligence networks found themselves questioned not just by critics, but by their own operatives. Back in the bunker, the final moment arrived. Megan looked into the camera. We were told to be quiet, told to stay safe, told to let the system clean itself. But the truth is it never will, not unless we become the system. Harry finished it. You know who we are. Now decide who you'll be. The livestream's impact was immediate. Within 24 hours, mass protests erupted in over a dozen countries. In Paris, the Place de la République filled with tens of thousands waving banners calling for transparency. In New York, Times Square broadcasted the real interview on giant digital screens. The footage looping raw and unfiltered. Hashtags like hashtag Operation Helix, hashtag Redline Exposed, and hashtag Truth over THRONES trended globally. No government was prepared for the scale of reaction. Inside the MI5 holding facility beneath Westminster, the lights flickered. Power had become unstable digitally, institutionally. Protocols failed to reboot. For the first time in years, silence ruled over the chaos. But the silence didn't last. A black SUV pulled up to a secondary entrance. The door opened and Abigail Cray stepped out, flanked by two intelligence operatives. She carried a sealed briefcase and a look of surrender that didn't quite match her usual confidence. She entered the holding room. Harry, Meghan, you've done what no whistleblower, no journalist, no parliament member could. You've broken the seal. Harry stood, then help us finish it. Cray didn't respond right away. Then she placed the briefcase on the table, clicked it open. Inside, a hard drive stamped with a blood-red insignia Phoenix Gate. What is this? Meghan asked. The fallback, Cray said, if Echo, Front, or Redline were ever exposed. A digital chain reaction designed to collapse key systems, economic, military, even satellite surveillance, set in motion by Montrose and his inner circle years ago. It's not just a contingency, it's a threat. If the world tries to hold them accountable, they will take everything down with them. Harry clenched his jaw. And you let them build it. Cray didn't defend herself. She simply said, now you have to stop them. Montrose had gone dark, but intelligence traced him to Geneva. Beneath the cover of a diplomatic envoy, he'd set up operations in a private data vault, a subterranean fortress used by elite banks and private intelligence firms. By the time any official task force was approved, it would be too late. That's why it wasn't official. Harry, Meghan, Thorne, and a small group of trusted digital freedom activists launched their own mission. With Cray's help, they used backdoor codes from the Phoenix Gate drive to map Montrose's likely node locations. It wasn't just about shutting him down. It was about broadcasting the final piece, the dead key, a confession, a recorded meeting between Montrose, several defense ministers, and senior tech executives discussing mass population control strategies under the guise of counterterrorism. The Geneva facility was layered in biometric barriers and encrypted networks. But it had one weakness: pride. Montrose never believed anyone would dare breach it. Not someone who used to wear a crown. Not someone he had already tried to erase. When the team infiltrated the vault, they found Montrose mid-transmission, preparing the digital trigger. You're too late, he said without looking up. Thorne stepped forward. We don't need to stop you. Just expose you. Montrose turned. You think truth wins now? You've given the people chaos, not clarity. Harry looked at him, steady. They'll decide what comes next, not you. Meghan uploaded the dead key from a handheld terminal. Montrose reached for a jammer, but Cray, monitoring from the surveillance van outside, froze his system remotely. The footage went live. It showed Montrose laughing with top officials, mocking public trust, discussing psychological manipulation, tactics through entertainment and influencer seeding. It showed dates. It showed names. It was undeniable. Fallout came fast. Interpol issued sealed warrants. The UN Security Council was called into emergency session. Several intelligence alliances fractured overnight. In the US, a congressional investigation was launched. In the UK, MI6 leadership was replaced, but perhaps more important than the headlines was the shift in tone. No longer passive, people began asking harder questions about power, media, and silence. Journalists, long compromised by fear or funding, found new courage. Whistleblowers flooded platforms. A digital reckoning had begun. As for Harry and Meghan, they disappeared from public view days after the Geneva leak. No goodbye, no press conference. Only a final message left in the metadata of the dead key file. This was never about us. It was about everyone else. Speculation exploded. Some said they were given diplomatic sanctuary in Iceland. Others believed they'd been taken into protective exile by a rogue NATO cell. A few claimed they were seen in South Africa, working quietly with displaced communities. No one knew for sure, but the signal remained. Every time a new lie surfaced, someone somewhere uncovered it. Anonymous, untraceable, but signed with one phrase: Echo, front is watching. The world would never be the same, and neither would the silence.